Let's jump right in. The Tigers are going into the All-Star break on a 4-game losing streak. But I think this 4-game losing streak had purpose in terms of the timing of it going into the break. There's going to be a sour taste in Scott Harris's mouth for the next week. I learned a lot over the course of the last 4 days. I learned a lot over this 4-game losing streak, probably more so than I've learned about this Tigers team in quite some time. First of all, Parker Meadows, in dire need of this All-Star break. If not, an even bigger conversation about Parker Meadows needs to be had. Struggling would be an understatement when it comes to Parker Meadows over the past 2 months. The other thing I learned was I might be a little bit nervous about running into Seattle in the postseason. Seattle's 2-4 versus the Tigers now in the season, and have gotten the best of Tarek Skubal not once but twice. Those 4 guys at the top of their lineup is not a joke. They've got some serious bats. They've got some serious arms. Seattle, now the number 1 team I would least want to see in the postseason. And third of all, that little sliver of hope that the bullpen gave us at the beginning of July, toss that up, throw it out the window. Because what the bullpen did this weekend was nothing short of a disaster. From Canely to Vest to Hannafy to Holton, every single person that they throw out there, Chase Lee, Kyler Montero, was a mess. This team gave up 35 runs against Seattle just this weekend. 35 runs against this Mariners team, who again, I do think is the Tigers' biggest threat in the American League. Now, if you look at the standings right now, it's Houston that's knocking on the door of that number 1 seed. And I'm not saying, hey, Houston's not a team to take seriously, but there's something about the Seattle team where they have damaged Tigers pitching in a way that no one else has this season. Tigers swept for the first time since they opened up the entire season in LA. They opened the first half and closed the first half by getting swept. So, of those 3 things that we learned, bullpen still being a disaster, Seattle now being the team that I at least, fear is not the right word, but the team I'd least want to see, similar to the way that I didn't fear Philadelphia, but it was the team I didn't want to see for the Lions in the postseason. Learn that. And the Parker Meadows thing. We're going to need to have a little bit deeper of a conversation about Parker Meadows later on in the show, but he desperately just needs to go clear his head, sit on the bench. Like, if we weren't at the break, I would actually argue, hey, maybe give Parker Meadows a couple days off here, because he's swinging at stuff that has no right to be swung at, predetermined swinging, kind of useless in the box right now. And then he started making mental errors in the outfield this weekend too. Now, neither of the 2 plays I'm referring to got deemed errors, but there was 2 plays this weekend, one on Friday, one on Sunday, that just were unexcusable for a guy that we all consider to be this golden glove type of outfielder. So, Kyle, am I missing anything? Did we learn one other thing about this Tigers team? Because, again, they go into the break on a 4-game losing streak, and I actually don't think it's the worst thing, because it allows us to take these glasses off, these blue and orange glasses off, that we've been wearing for quite some time. Hey, this is the best team in baseball, best record, this huge lead in the AL Central, 11.5 games right now, even after the 4-game losing streak. I think that blinded some Tigers fans to the point where a lot of people viewed this team as somewhat flawless, when that is not the reality of things. They are still one of the best teams in baseball. They still have the best record in baseball, 1 game ahead of the Los Angeles Dodgers, who have lost 7 of their last 9 games. But I do think there is some purpose here in terms of Tigers fans learning a lot about this team. And I do think going into the break, Scott Harris having that little sour taste in his mouth isn't the worst thing. Not to say that this losing streak is going to change what they're doing at the trade deadline here in a couple weeks, but it's certainly going to make him examine things a little bit harder and maybe keep him up a little bit later at night thinking, hey, maybe I do need to be just a slightly more aggressive here at the deadline. Maybe I do need to be willing to give up some of these top prospects, because we're going to need to revamp this bullpen in a way that I didn't necessarily think we were going to have to a couple of weeks ago. Everyone knew they were going to add an arm. But now you're looking around this bullpen, it's like, all right, if we can't trust Tommy Kahnle out there, maybe we need to invest in several new arms in the bullpen, maybe even a starter as well. I don't think it is the worst thing how they ended the season. I'm just trying to look at it glass half full, you know? I'm trying to take some positives out of a 4-game losing streak. You still have this 11.5-game lead over Minnesota. You still got a 2.5-game lead over Houston for the best record in the American League. These losses were affordable. How can you spin them positively? We learned a lot, and I think it's putting a little bit of pressure on Scott Harris to make a bigger decision here in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we all knew a series like this was coming. Not being swept since the very first series of the season, that's not going to sustain. You're going to get swept at some point. You could argue that this time in the season is probably the best part for it to happen, right? You get to regroup over the break. To your point about the bullpen, it's the biggest one. 23 runs allowed just by the bullpen in these 3 games. 23. I mean, we talked about Skubal and Mize had off days or whatever, but man, you can't have the bullpen do that combined with those off days. And the Seattle matchup isn't very favorable. We discussed it even prior to the series about how their pitching staff was so deep, and they do have the combination, like their top half of their lineup is very good. But yeah, it's hard not to look at this the way that you are because they're still the best team in baseball. They still have such a comfortable lead where you can afford to take one of these series and be like, okay, let's relook at this group and be like, what is the spots that really we need to hone in on over this break? And now they have that ability to do that.
989-837-6125. I want to know what you guys learned about this Tigers team over this 4-game losing streak. I don't think it's quite time to panic. That's not what I'm doing. The panic button's way over there. We're not even looking at the panic button right now. But we are examining this team a little bit further and a little bit more truthfully going into the All-Star break because of these 4 losses. I think it highlighted some of the Tigers' flaws, which isn't a bad thing. Because again, like, compare it to this Lions team. I know we've done this 100 times, and maybe this isn't the best way to view it compared to a baseball team and a football team, but the Lions were so fantastic in the regular season that I think going into the postseason, we kind of glossed over some of their flaws, especially with how many injuries there were heading into the postseason. You know, you thought, oh, it's just a Commanders team, rookie quarterback. I'm guilty of it too. But then you look at this defense, looking back, it's like, I don't know why anyone would have expected them to win multiple playoff games in the NFC with how many injuries they were dealing with on defense. Now, there's not as many injuries. There's really no injuries for this Tigers team right now. But again, their record has been so good. Their win-loss record has been so fantastic. They have such a comfortable lead in the American League and in the AL Central that I think fans sometimes gloss over some of the team's flaws. And the flaws, I think, got highlighted very, very bright, to say the least, this weekend against Seattle. They get swept for the first time since the Open. Michael Prevey let us know in the chat, Tigers got swept by Seattle in 1984. We all know how the season ended in 1984. I'm not saying that's not possible, right? Like, I still believe in this Tigers team. I still would take them against any team in the American League once they get through the postseason or once they get to the postseason. But Seattle, probably the number 1 team I'm picking of teams I don't want to play. Parker Meadows, we're going to need to have a conversation about him coming up. Because if the Tigers want to be serious and taken seriously, which they are, like, let's not get that twisted, they can't have someone who's an auto out in the lineup. They eliminated most of those over the past 2 years. Parker Meadows is creeping back into a territory that is about to get real awkward if things don't turn around post-deadline. And again, this bullpen, we had a sliver of hope at the beginning of July. Holton had 5 straight starts that were scoreless. Hannafy had looked better as of late. All that thrown out the window versus Seattle. Kahnle destroyed. Vest, not his best stuff. Tyler Holton gave up a home run in both of his appearances. Even the starters, Skubal and Mize, gave up 10 combined runs. This Seattle team just has the Tigers' number. So what did you learn? That's what I learned. What did you learn from this weekend against Seattle? 989-837-6125. We'll get to some text.